Was this your passe and then plie?
Now?
You're doing your one up. Oh.
Yeah, I'm doing it like...
Oh, yeah.
I do that.
Is that like a thing?
Up, yeah. Sure. I love it. Doesn't it look nice?
Yeah.
Can you try?
Music with Roots in the Ether, 2015.
I don't get that reference.
Music with Roots in the Ether was a series that Bob Ashley did, which were 1 hour-long continuous shots of interviews and then of performances. He had a really wonderful camera from the camera with a really great eye. And so they were actually, the framing of the shots was often quite beautiful. But they're almost unwatchable as, 1976 or 75.
I see. I think we're going to have to speak a little bit louder. Given the air conditioning and the...
we want to be one with the ambience, though. This is the new relationality.
Yeah, the unhearable interviews of Ron Kuivila.
Right.
It'll be sort of consistent.
D.T. Suzuki.
I'm Brian Parks. Welcome to Conversations. This is episode 3, but is being released chronologically as episode 2. But in terms of...
okay, what's the hidden episode 2?
In terms of pure chronos, Conversations with Brian Parks episode 2 was with Jake Kaiser, harpsichord builder in New London. The footage of which was erased, but as I've confided to Ron earlier, I went to some internet black hole and found software recovery data, and so I've recovered a preponderance of that data, although it's in somewhat...
You wanted to say data recovery software.
What did I say?
Software recovery data.
It's the ones. It's incredible data. I recovered data using software that I downloaded for $40 on the internet. After just downloading the demo version, which they give me tempting thumbnails of the footage that they're about to recover for me, if I pay them money. It's an old world family business.
In fact, they're professional erasers. It's a protection racket.
So we are on the porch of the Harvey White House, and today's episode we're very proud to announce our first sponsor, which is Iberbo, ideas best realized by others. And do you have any ideas that you don't think would be great, but you just don't have time in your life to realize?
Oh, I think basically all my ideas would be better realized by others. But what I'm really struck by is spare me the details, which is basically that idea, is as the voice of power. Spare me the details is what the boss says to the minion.
Yeah.
Right, and so ideas better realized by others are, planning flows downwards, information flows upwards. So it's like I have this plan now before me.
Right.
So it's actually a dream of... it's marketing, that company is marketing a dream of authority without exposure. So it's sort of like a 1% aspirational product.
Like an aspirational speaker.
Sort of. It's like, well, I can use my capital to enable something to happen and not have to get my hands dirty. So I'm sparing the details, but I can claim a certain degree of authority and participation through my immaterial material presence as capital.
So you don't see it as a decentralized atelier?
Well, that would be... It could be. Although maybe then it would be better to trade. You trade ideas with people.
Right.
So a potlatch. And you could you get given an idea, and then you thought, well, okay, now I can't do this idea. Then you trade it again. So you'd have a whole kind of community trade until you get the idea that, oh yeah, I definitely want to do this. That would be kind of beautiful.
Is that what social media is attempting to do in any sort of way? I don't really follow it, but is that?
No. No, I don't know. I mean,
Well, our political movements aren't necessarily compositional impulses, but aren't they sort of predicated on, I don't feel like following this all the way through, but perhaps you do as a group?
no, I don't understand that. For political movements are about getting people to participate in some kind of specific project or program, either by contribution or by voting or by proselytizing, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a little different. Oh boy, moonshine. Cool.
Thank you, Janet.
This is this West Hartford moonshine. It's hot stuff.
Janet and I have this running trope in our lives where it does exactly what West Hartford moonshine, what you think it would do.
Yeah.
Keeps everything basically the same. Janet is somehow redacted unintentionally from all data that includes performance. So, memorably, there's a great photograph from the 2009 commencement at Wesleyan of the West African drumming group playing, and there was this alum who just sort of walked up there before we started and just sort of stood there. He's not doing anything, he's just sort of standing there.
Right in front of her?
So all you see is like Janet's hand playing a dobro, and that's it. And it sort of looks like it might be this alum,
Right.
dismembered hand of his or something. But that, for some reason, every shot that is taken of us playing music, Janet's somehow not in it, or she's behind someone. And so, if devotees of our series will know that she also delivered our tea in the last episode with just part of her hand. So I think she's now taking a sort of pleasure in it.
She's actually, no, but she was co-present for a moment, wasn't? Oh no, I guess she wasn't.
I think she intentionally
She
stood
stayed
off screen.
frame.
That's right.
Now, the good thing about videos, for still photographs, I am almost invariably photographed like this. I always look like I'm on drugs. I think my reflexes are quick enough that I sense, or somehow I flinch just before the photo is taken, and it's uncannily reliable. Like out of group photos where I'm involved, maybe 1 out of 10 will actually be usable.
Do you think you're talking when the photo's taken?
No, I can be there, looking, trying to hold a smile or do whatever, like do one of those fake photo things, and it doesn't matter at that last instant. I shiver, I quake.
This isn't
I quake.
This isn't similar, but I tend to look anxious in all photos taken of me, which I think is totally appropriate. So I'm fine with it. What are you? I'm not going to ask my usual first question because we.
But why not?
Well, I'm going to ask a different kind of question, which is my first question is usually just what are you working on, and I'll ask that. I want to know what you're working on. I kind of am interested to know. One of the, it's not a complaint ever registered about you, it's just sort of this wonderful thing that students often converge upon, which is that there's very little trace of you digitally. Mm-hmm. And I would say that I'm wondering how concerted of an effort that has been, or if it's just been nothing you've had to really worry about, or if at some point you've had to sort of decide to have or have not a presence.
Well, at one point I considered, should I do a web page or something like that? And at one point Bobby even went so far as to prepare a mock-up of a web page. And it simply didn't speak to me at that point. In that I didn't see the point of it. And there's a way in which then that became an interesting policy to not engage with that. But now I think I might engage with it, but in some other way, some secondary way. Because obviously there are little bits and traces, Now it's starting to become a little more active, perform a little more. Those will inevitably be there. The problem is that there's a variety of different formulae for what a web page might look like, and all of those formulae are, they don't speak to me at all. So for example, I joined Facebook just to sort of see what was going on, and then, friended a billion people, But basically, as far as I can see, it's this endless barrage of self-advertisement. And so some people do that well and can be clever, but it's exhausting when you have that much coming in. So I probably look at it maybe once a week, maybe twice a week, and only will look at a few postings. And so I don't quite, I think you have to be addicted to that mode of communication. You have to be keeping up with it. So it has to be part of a kind of constant pattern, I think, to be fulfilling. And that I certainly am not interested in. But that just means I'm a geezer. It's like, so for other people it's completely naturalized and internalized. It's just sort of how they navigate. And there's absolutely no question but that communication of marginal or radical arts now largely takes place through those mechanisms. Because it's free, doesn't require a publicity mechanism, and it's efficient because it will be going to people that are likely to at least consider going to the event. So, I'm not saying that there's some unalloyed bad there at all. It's rather that I haven't found the way that I feel like myself in interacting with them. In enacting myself within that thing.
I guess an obvious point I might make is the communication of radicalized and marginalized arts. If this delivery mechanism allows that communication, I guess what I'm asking is, can the fact of those fora being communicated in an easier way, can it undo their radicalism and their marginalization, which I might argue are points of are aspects of their utility. They're hardness to find. By making them less,
they're still hard to find. They're not hard to find for a particular social place. But look, okay, so absolutely something I am interested in with regard to that is the complete absence of peripheral vision. This I think is a truly pernicious side of the individuation, customization of one's web experience, of all of that, is that it makes it look. The thing that's interesting in going to a different neighborhood, let alone a different country, is to see the world through different eyes, because those eyes are, in a sense, geographically located. So this is an old-fashioned idea, that you go to a college neighborhood, you go into the coffee shop, and you look at the bulletin. Okay. Well, there's no way to do that easily through social media. You can do that with websites to some degree. You have to find them. Okay. And that strikes me as it's a little bit bizarre that there aren't tools to provide that opportunity. So, I have this idea that it would be very interesting to, for example, have a tool that would allow you to look for keywords, say, from YouTube, but with different kinds of criteria. So the fascination right now is all the things, quote-unquote, going viral. So that's all about massive replication. It seems to me it's much more interesting to look for keywords that have persistence, but not going viral. And that if you have persistence that never becomes fashionable, then there's a strong likelihood that you have some subculture or some serious fascination or some obsession going on that could be really interesting to encounter. And that those are... And it isn't that, okay, then that obsession might become viral. It doesn't mean that it's necessarily poison. It's just that my guess is there's more of those obsessions out there than there are cases of those obsessions going viral. And that those interest me. I mean, that is anything that involves kind of long-term commitment of attention that people give, I think can be touching and sometimes quite, remarkable. It happened the other day. I went to a, Wethersfield, Connecticut is the home of the, I'm forgetting the name of the organization, that's the ham radio users organization. They set up the rules for I think they administered the tests for, Morse code and this and that. And there was a little sort of sale of radio equipment going on in the parking lot of the school. It was really sad. I mean, basically these guys are all, in their late 60s, early 70s. Said, oh yeah, thus and so isn't here. Yeah, he's going through a tough time. He's homeless. He's got his ham radio outfit, but he doesn't have a home. So it's kind of this last gasp of a particular version of futuristic technology. The tremendous ocean of the radio ether that happened to be there. So you could kind of, I found that very poignant, very sweet, and very much about this difference between that predominantly male. Okay, it has all those issues. Sure, it's technology. It has all of that gender problem.
Not like this.
But it had the kind of touching quality of the hobbyist obsession, as opposed to the collective obsession of like these things. Yeah. So, I find myself not really wanting to not being very good about my cell phone. I should call it mobile, I suppose, or not really cellular anymore.
Yeah.
I'm just a little reluctant. But, like I said, this other kind of way, thinking about ways that I could actually encounter social media more broadly. Encounter it as neighborhoods rather than individual experiences. Kind of interests me. Now, maybe that's just duplicating a corporate mindset. It's like, oh, we want to see the scene so we can know how to market to it. And it's quite possible that one of the reasons why it's difficult to get peripheral vision is exactly that's business intelligence. So, on the other hand, I think it's also that it grows like Topsy, and Google itself doesn't really quite know how to deal with the onslaught of structure that it generates.
For me in here.
There's no more water, but you could go get some more. Did you get some more?
No, you.
You want me to get some more?
Oh yeah, I can.
Thank you.
Get a water cup. Could I have it?
I was at a bookstore, and the guy was both complaining about the internet and also saying without it he wouldn't be surviving, because most of his sales, especially rare books, are coming from overseas. But that's a difficult thread to follow, because without the internet, people might still be supporting his bookstore because they needed to, in a more personal way. In other words, the bookstore existed before this paradigm was dominant, so it could have maintained itself had the paradigm well, thank you, not come into being. With it in being, he has to therefore use it in order to survive. Sure. Okay. But his main complaint was that.
So would be the telephone. It's like that's an inescapable part of any change in communication.
So, are we in that? Are we amidst that shift where you can choose to become basically? If you resist, there's a danger of extinction, obviously obsolescence. You do not pertain.
Sure. I have the advantage of having an institutional affiliation, so I can.
Get my water ball. Get it.
I can exist in an informatic way, in a kind of passive-aggressive mode, simply because of the institution, to some degree.
But also, yes, you have an institutional affiliation. You also have a particular uniqueness or value to your pedagogy and work that happens to exist in an institution. But makes you valuable nonetheless because it can't be replicated. It isn't replicated. Were it to be replicated, there would be a devaluation whether or not you're institutionally affiliated. I mean, you might survive as a person, but
Right. Well,
so why is there more of that? Is that constantly going on in this just sort of like
more of what?
more liminal way where people are valuable and their work is valuable and therefore they can choose to eschew this mode? Like,
Well, I mean, I'm at a little bit of a loss of how to. But I think these are not necessarily helpful ways of thinking about it, because there's two different pieces here. Hey! Oh, where'd it go? Where'd it go? Where'd it go? Oh, there it is. Here it is. Ready? Here we go. Catch it. Oh, almost. So close. So close. There's the affordances it provides. Oh, okay.
the affordances. What provides?
Okay, here. All right.
The affordances what provides?
Oh, for example, websites. I mean, so, yeah, I mean, it's possible to do a business with essentially no staff.
Right. Right.
And so what that means is, so that opens up this whole kind of different artisanal approach. So this was a little bit what Ideopreneurial Electrophonics was trying to touch on. Festival from February is this idea of boutique synthesizer makers. We've gone from, in the late 90s, there was one analog synthesizer company in the world, Dripford. Now there's about 50, and a lot of them are, you know, 3 people or 1 person. You know, whether it's Mark Farabos or Michael Johnson or Peter Blosser. I mean, and there's lots of them. So part of what, there's several different things that are interesting to me there. One of which is the question of whether the attraction, the resumed interest in analog synthesizers in this Eurorack format is as a kind of negation of the computer, or negation of the, or what it's in the negative space of. Is the negative space of the experience of dealing with menu-driven environments where you're constantly drilling down and specifying things through a template rather than the kind of flattened space of interconnection and dial that you have there? Is it that they're not, that what happens can't be immediately and easily replicated? Oh, bummer, Alban. Oh, you're gonna have to go get it, buddy. You can go get it. Yeah, just get down the stairs. Not so bad. Oh, there's Orion. Orion, could you get the ball?
Which ball?
I think the white Nerf ball that was part of this.
The wiffle ball.
The wiffle ball.
Oh, come to
Excuse
me.
me. There it is. So anyway, so
Get it. Yeah.
So I think it's important to not think that there's going to be some kind of generalization you can make about these technologies that's independent of their use. And that those uses are all varied. So, you know, I mean, but I do think it's a mistake to feel obligated to do something. This is because that is exactly, okay, so in the history of all of this, AT&T, for example, in the late 80s, had this whole advertising campaign with the tagline, "You will." Have you ever put your child to sleep via video phone? You will. So the idea was trying to educate an audience to the new affordances that we provided by, you know, the brave new world of the internet, or some kind of network digital media that would be more like a telephone system at that point. But Christine Tamblyn made the nice point that we're also saying you will have to. So It's also to create a certain level of anxiety. So that, oh, I have to keep up with this, I have to catch up with this. And so that's a little bit like, I don't know, what is this term? There's a class guide on the web. It's not dissing, it's something a little bit like that, where the idea is it's for kind of predatory womanizers, that the trick is to deliver a compliment that simultaneously undermines the person's complimented confidence and so on.
The compliment is towards the predator?
No, the predator makes a compliment that carries within it an implied criticism as well. So the idea is that by that combination it causes the recipient to want to please
Alban, I can do it.
the predator. So basically corporations do
I
that.
can do it.
Is this done
But do it.
I have no idea. I mean, I just know.
online, this practice?
No, I think this is like just sort of a pickup artist thing, but I don't know. This is like just one of these things that floated by on the web. You know, I just noticed it. But the analogy I want to make is that that's essentially what
I have one of
the position technology companies are in creating a need for their product that hasn't existed before. Is either they have to convince a customer that it's providing a real benefit, or they have to convince them that it may provide a benefit that they can't understand, and their inability to understand that benefit makes them irredeemably, so they better do it. So that the idea is, so that in other words, the role is to undermine the confidence of the consumer and have the consumer then have confidence that they can stay up to date by participating. So Apple, I think, is brilliant at this. I mean, essentially, lots and lots of people will imagine that if you want to stay at the cutting edge of commercial technology, just buy the latest Apple.
Why don't you just bring it on up here?
Right.
And the combination of really good merchandising, I mean, lots of smart stuff going on there. But that means that then you have a clientele that are functioning purely in terms of brand, and that's a winning strategy.
Sure.
No thanks, I'm not going to.
I don't need to project either a delimiting systemic approach, nor an overly sinister motivation. But you do raise those kind of implications because the pressure. I mean, the pressure to update one's software, which I sense, which I try to relate to some sort of ecological connection we make with our devices. That these are basically animals that have needs, and updating they need electricity. We need to be in a situation where we have electricity flowing, so these things can tap into them to receive this basic fuel. And the updating thing, which is a little stranger, which is an anxiety-producing sort of sensation that can last, that can persist.
Well, I mean, yeah, because what's going on there is there's this whole transition in that industry from the idea that you buy something and own it. So you buy a piece of software, you can resell it. So you're simply paying for a service. And there's a great deal of interest in flipping over to a service model. People learn that from the phone company. I mean, it's like that wins. So Adobe versus software maker. I mean, that's what they're trying to do.
Throw it to me once you got it, okay? Throw it to me, okay? I'm not playing.
The thing about that is that it has the effect of what? Making
no phone to you. What? Okay, it says no phone to you.
Making it harder to use those tools in other ways for various reasons. So, you know, a telephone you can always tear apart. I mean, of course, the whole thing about the telephone was they were by Bell telephones for a long time. So you basically were made afraid to even touch them. And so it's just sort of returning to that kind of idea. All these things, and this is just sort of a natural process of rationalization. Natural, I mean, it's a characteristic of Western culture for a long time to do this. So, and what you see with media, for example, is that as they get more rationalized, they become easier and cheaper to produce and more difficult to alter. So, you know, a record you can fiddle with, a CD you can fiddle with in a much less physical and more limited way. Or you can resort to a piece of software to enable you to fiddle with it, but then now you're in a situation where you're in a marketplace for the tool that enables you to fiddle with it rather than being able to fiddle with it directly. So you're then safely within the coded space of the media, and you're only navigating within different controlled codes rather than directly with its physical the materiality of the media. And we feel sentimental about having lost that capability. And so, you know, there's lots of interesting work using old media, debased media in different ways. There's lots of interest in that. And it's out of that space, for example, that the interest in analog synthesizers, I think, in part comes. That it seems more direct to be functioning that way. So, you know, it's like we're talking about the weather. I mean, it's like that's just the way the culture works, or the way media culture has been channeled. I mean, what I'm interested in right now is the way in which more and more, you know, I mean, you can think of Ubu as a good example of this. These things that were completely inaccessible, rare, become available, and become available in a comprehensive, encyclopedic way. And that by becoming available in that way, your relationship to them is fundamentally changed.
Right.
And that issue I'm trying to think through. So I'm actually working on this piece right now. I'll just segue into that. Ted Mencken. It's kind of my homage to Bob Ashley. And the basic idea is it started out as the thought of a kind of dovetailing together of the kind of ritualized affirmation of a TED Talk with it's Sarah Megan Preston Rachel and there are men and women. Which this piece, this text, who knows who wrote it? They say John Barton wrote it. Could have been Bob Ashley's friend wrote it. That's a big better sense to me, but I have no idea. And he made this piece out of, that was never really finished, but there's a recording of that you can find that was released on the record. Oops. Well,
okay. And so, what's your relation to it?
Okay, so the text is a kind of permutational poem enumerating all these famous names. Except there's an equal balance of men and women that are most frequently mentioned.
So they're repetitively mentioned in this
yeah,
enumeration.
They're very truly great men. Boy, I can't even come up with a sentence out. But it's one of these fabulous sentences that doesn't mean anything,
right?
But parses.
Yeah.
Rational sentence.
Hey, no.
So a lot of it is Sarah Paul Hart and H.L. Mencken. Turns out Sarah Paul Hart was a kind of literary figure in the South, Southern Belle, childhood friend of Zella Fitzgerald and Tallulah Bankhead, who ultimately married Mencken. Oh, thank you.
Yay!
Yeah. I like these reverse geometries. Oh, this is good.
I've done it before.
Thank you. It's almost like a Ron Nagel cup. And so I got interested in a bunch of different things. One is the way in which the text and its encyclopedic unfolding is a little bit analogous to the web. One of the things about all this information is, in order to present it as seamlessly accessible, all the effort that is required to maintain that is kind of suppressed. And the effort becomes visible precisely when you don't update your software.
Okay.
And the effort is an effort that's both industrial and consumer, which is to say the logic of the industry is it relies on this continual innovation, which means everything becomes obsolete and has to be replaced. It means that consumers, users who are consumers, have to have to participate in the hamster cage.
Sure.
Or what do you call those vehicles?
Hamster wheels.
Okay, that you have to be running on the hamster wheel.
Yeah.
So the way Bob did the piece was he would read individual stanzas in one breath, record that, and then splice them together. His thought was that the text should be breathless. And so I got interested in this question of, well, how on earth would you perform that? He had thought about trying to perform it, then gave up on the idea. There's a video of a performance that was kind of loosely derived on it, where Mimi Johnson is Whistler's mother. He is George Washington. Paul de Ritas is Marconi. Blue Jean Kearney is Beethoven. But so I'm interested in this idea of, well, okay, so how would you do that? And the easy way to do this, sort of obvious, is, well, if you are speaking into a processor, so speaking to a computer, it can play back a little more slowly than you spoke. And so consequently get behind you long enough for you to take a breath, and then you can splice out the breath and continue.
In real time.
In real time. And of course, the thing about that delay is that can induce speech impediment, because hearing at a delay kind of often breaks up forces a stutter, breaks up your in various ways.
Which I'm sure will make Ashley very happy.
Well, I don't know if it would or not, but that's the thought. So the piece is about, first of all, using that mechanism as a way to read, but then revealing the effort. So the direct voice, the voice recorded, the physical voice in space, the voice through the microphone, the voice through the stretch processing, all end up being heard at different times. So the present, the performed present, if you will, becomes this kind of turbulence where you're hearing what I just said or what you're about to hear through the formal thing said in advance. So the future and the past become kind of blurred in this. And I think of that as being very much part of the experience of cruising the web. You have no idea. So there's a turbulence there, and the physical effort of the reading, which will sometimes be very, very rapid. Ah, right. Do you want me to throw it to you? Oh, I'm going to get it. Good job. Again? Up. Okay. Up in the air. Up. Oh, you got it? Oh, you better go get it.
Okay.
Anyway, and so my idea is that the piece will be, on the one hand, about Bob, his interest in the music of speech pattern, and at the same time, also the extent to which I was very, very, very involved in Ashley's work as a student in the 70s.
Yeah.
And I became less involved later on. But also about the flattening of perspective on these different historical avant-garde practices that's created by the web, by Uber. In a good way. I mean, I don't think it's a bad thing at all. I just think it changes everything.
I don't, you know.
So the idea of this piece is to, I'm still working on it. What the big problem is, to do the entire text, which is 128 stanzas, well, it's going to be an hour and a half at least. And to make that both performable and, in a sense, hearable. So one of the things I do, which Bob would never do, and this is where the TED piece of it comes in anyway, because the TED formula is to be completely explanatory. The idea is it's like a New Yorker article. It wants you to know exactly where you are every minute and kind of be comfortably in your easy chair.
Yeah.
Is to do different analyses of this text. For example, there's specific the names that there's certain adverbs that appear. And then the rewrite those sometimes. So then what happens is that you stop hearing the sentence and you start hearing
Step to the side because I want to just try something.
an incantation of slightly altered repeating pattern. So, as God, the Wolcott as God is a phrase. There's a Beethoven as God. So there's maybe 3 or 4 names that have as God attached to them. To isolate those and say those in repetition, my idea is that they, then having heard that, you're prepared to hear that in the actual text.
Yeah.
So the idea is these analytic interpolations are sort of ear training.
Okay.
At the same time as they're also a loop pause. I mean, they kind of, give you a break from having to deal with the sentence. You deal with the not full syntax, not the full syntax of the sentence anymore, but just these phrases. And there's a way in which just those phrases are more song-like, more musical. See, I wanted to catch it.
Did you say Lufthansa?
Luftpause.
Breath pause. Okay.
So conceptually, so his idea is that it's breathless, this breathless incantation, but my feeling is for the listener, viewer, if you make it breathless, you make it impossible. In a way that was interesting and very useful in the 70s, but in a way that is completely incomprehensible now. And I experienced that and took great pleasure in it
In the 70s.
in the 70s. And so I'm interested in the piece leading to that.
Oh, Alban,
Yes!
Alban.
Oh, watch out, watch out. Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. Oh, I love it. That was so great.
Oh, the fourth wall breaking itself.
Exactly. Now, there was a guy, James Byrne, video artist.
Hold on, we have to watch Alban jump down these steps.
Okay, we're watching. Jump. And he did this piece. It was a commercial. He actually paid to run it on airtime, where he would crawl towards the camera like this, trying to keep his entire body in the image, and then when he'd get up to the camera, he'd just tip it over to the side. No, I can't do that because it's on a tripod.
Right.
But we got the better version of this, and this is the version of now. This is the social media version.
Right.
Which is Alban is everybody else. The other thing that's, I think, really interesting, again, not well understood, is avant-garde stuff.
He says yellow, by the way. He says the second syllable first. My ball.
Right there next to the jump rope.
They both have this interesting
reversal.
It's not dyslexia. They just flip the order of syllables. So when I say they, I mean my 2 children, and therefore I don't think it's like a.
I can't say spectacular.
Spectacular? Say spec.
Spec.
Tack.
Tack.
You.
Yeah.
Law. You did.
And if we Robert Ashley-ified.
Spectacular. Spectacular.
Ask Orion.
Robert Ashley could have taken those 4 stanzas and made them breathless. She would have said it perfectly. I don't mean to be clear.
Right. Well, or it could be in her case. No, you don't want it to be breathless, so that she can get the order up. Right. That's what we were doing.
Sure.
So I mean, actually, and that. So anyway, that whole thing about talking and or about. So that's the idea of that piece.
Yeah.
And what we were on there for a moment, which I think is another really interesting issue, which I'd love to figure out how to have embedded in this piece, but haven't yet. I'm not working on it right now. I'm going to work on it in another couple of weeks because I'm in the middle of doing other things. Is this question of, well, why is it that experimental music isn't for kids? Or what are the different... when is it that an idea is creating, is either predicated on an imagined audience or not? And what happens there? So I mean, okay, that's terrible. What I just said was not very articulate. But the fundamental point I'm thinking about here is what's interesting in social media is kids see everything. So the hierarchies and controls on access are fundamentally destabilized. What they learn from that is totally different from what you might expect. And what they'll look at is not necessarily what you expect. And what I've found, certainly with Kai, my daughter, and when I talk to people, kids roughly the same age, kind of sounds similar, is a lot of their use of YouTube, for example, will be more around different forms of project, like craft project, like trading card games. So there's a whole thing on YouTube of you draw your own trading card game and then show the cards one after the other and explain. And possibly from that, Kai got very involved with drawing her own trading card games. And also got involved in making packaging, making them as close to a Pokemon pack, well, not being Pokemon, and then she would seal the package, wait a day, and then open it to feign surprise at the card shop. So
on a video?
No, although she's also making videos, although it seems right now the videos are more about her Minecraft worlds. But she's still developing her craft. Like, she hasn't put something on YouTube yet, but she will. But so what I'm very interested in is, well, okay, this is not the narrative that we get about
children,
about media also.
Okay.
You know, that we think of it as pacifying or being about constant distraction. But no, these are actually highly project-oriented, and part of it is that you can get access to a kind of weird expertise readily. You know, so Dina's work on ASMR, who made me aware of ASMR,
through her.
Yeah, through her. I mean, it turned out it was sort of a general discussion. So, so Dina McAbee had a kind of autonomous sensory and response effect that she was interested in. Peter Blauser had a problem with misophonia, and of course, Daniel Fishkin has tinnitus. So there's this whole group that were involved in these different highly autonomous listening experiences that are not normally constructed as part of social exchange, but in fact is the absence of social exchange. So the interesting thing about ASMR is it becomes the site for social exchange via social media. It could only exist through social media, and it kind of is imitative of or rattling of or similar to ideas in experimental music. So all of that, and it's like a funny musical form, but it's a musical form.
Excuse me, Baba.
Excuse me, Ron.
Yeah.
Yes.
She wants to run across the street.
Are you guys going to try to see Ali and Maya?
No, they said they would come over in 5 minutes and ring the doorbell, and they haven't done that.
Well, why don't you go across the street with him and see if you can meet them halfway?
Okay.
They're crossing the street. This is pretty impressive.
Well, it's not a busy street. Let's not.
Yeah.
This video is about you and I.
The police are coming.
Well, there was that bizarre few minutes where people were having this utterly futile debate about whether people were not helicoptering enough or over helicoptering, which was an utterly ridiculous conversation to have in an oblique way because it's a very case by case. It's an only case by case. But it was done in this sort of like very broad, like let's ask someone from Topeka, someone from Florida, what they think about parenting based on their own kids. I mean, it was.
I don't want you to go.
Well, you know, it's actually the social norms and what is the origin of those social norms. And actually, you know, back to the Ted Mencken, the other thing that does interest me a lot there is this kind of 40s quality of the text, whether because it was actually written or because it's been made that way, who knows. And I did think it could be really wonderful if I could construct a TED Talk that used only vernacular from the 40s. The question of being able to hear the stylization really clearly. I mean, okay, yeah, so here's the thing. I mean, and maybe this actually gets us to a broad issue. So there's this whole period where the interest is in mystery and confusion, in a sense, in removing syntax and acquiring an exposure to something that then you have to make sense of or not make sense of on your own terms. And of course, this has slightly mystical origins in theosophy, anthroposophy, and so forth. You know, certainly back in the day of the earliest forms of this kind of fragmentation. But maybe not later, or maybe it does. Who knows? This is an interesting historical debate. But it seems to me that now we're in a period where, I mean, this is like a little bit like the conundrum of non-idiomatic improvisation and its impossibility. So Dark Bailey first espouses the idea and then accepts that, well, no, it becomes an idiom. Because then breaking syntax becomes its own syntax, that self-destructs, it becomes a recognizable style, and there it is. So we have lots and lots of different replications of the avant-garde that you can find on YouTube that are not that at all. This is another thing I'm interested in trying to tease apart or make sense out of. And my thought about it is, and this is a way very conservative idea, is that yes, so that work now in part is about being able to hear these things clearly, like making it evident rather than having it simply be co-present.
Making the
properties of the thing evident. So, in a sense, having the primer as part of the piece. And so having the primer as part of the piece is what Ted Benton is about. Or that's the way in which it's completely at variance to what Bob is doing. It's not Bob Ashley. It's in honor of Bob Ashley, and it's about Bob in part, but it's about other things as well. But the way in which it's really completely antithetical is that would just never interest him.
Was the project in the 70s? We're saying that the way that it might be sonified in the 70s lacks potency today because the project has fundamentally changed.
Well, I'm saying, I'm not sure if it would lack potency or not. It would not. There's no way for me to, as a composing now, to compose that way would be like, composing the style of Mozart. I mean, that doesn't really make sense. So I want to be careful about that, because I think, go to Ubu and listen to the piece. It's great. Yeah. It's long. It's not that long. It's like 40 minutes. But,
I understand.
But 40 minutes qualifies as long in a way now that it did not qualify as long when I was alive.
I don't mean that the composition has lacked relevance. I mean that the process of composition has changed. I mean, this is a different type of composing mode. There's different projects.
Well, yeah. Except, I mean, what I'm objecting to here is I think it's a mistake to talk about it as if, okay, if you talk about it the way you are now, it's as if you're kind of claiming some kind of historical teleology. Like, this is where we are now. No. I'm doing this. This is what's working for me. What it means in terms of a larger discourse. I'm a symptom as much as I'm an actor. So who knows? I mean, I don't want to make. I just don't want to get into that claim. But and keep it specific. But the specific thing is exactly that. Because of this conundrum of the impossibility of maintaining the non-idiomatic. Okay. What that means is there's a loss of interest in the mysteries of the never previously encountered. I mean, there's still some interest there, but the interest is how it maps or how it can be located rather than in how it dislocates. So before
just
you could...
Just to slow down, the never previously encountered, how that has been... To locate where it actually might have been encountered, what it resembles, as opposed to what it breaks apart.
Exactly. So that one utility of that is, oh, I don't have to think this thing I'm so used to thinking. But the response now would be, where can I locate this in the encyclopedia of materials I have on my iPhone or my iPod?
Oh, I see.
So it's to locate it within a system of citation. Right? I mean, that's the side effect of having encyclopedic access. So now, the mystery thing, and that, of course, there's a whole romanticism to that. There's a kind of an appeal to the uncanny. There's lots of issues there that we could decide to be supercilious about, or not.
The non-idiomatic.
Yeah. Well, the
trace.
The goals that one imagines, why one would decide that is a useful project. You know, that cut-up. You know, like, why is the cut-up a useful idea? And so, and my thought about that right now is, well, okay, so another possibility is it becomes about combining an ever more detailed hearing, the ability to hear the material of the piece, if you will, with greater and greater clarity, and that nevertheless still ends up exhausting your analytic faculty. Right, that's one way to at least enact the problem. So it's not like that is some kind of aesthetic solution and now I can have a little factory making pieces. Rather, it's like, well, okay, this has really changed terms. And changed terms on multiple levels here. And so this piece is kind of cobbling together several different aspects of these changed terms in order to
but no poking
enact for myself an oral experience of those issues in order to try to understand them.
Yeah.
So, and to me, okay, that's composing. That feels like a reason to compose.
Now, in one sense, I'm pulling back the lens quite a bit to think about. I mean, I think if your work is largely contending with observation in space, whereas I see this piece as something where, in other words, I mean, I haven't actually run into that many of your pieces outside of concert settings at Wesleyan. Because, no, that's not true. That's not true, because The World at 6 was not very much atmospheric, contending with space. I mean, the pieces exist. You may or may not happen to observe them. You may or may happen to know that you're observing them, depending on the environment in which they're in place.
Right, well, I mean, now you're thinking of the weather at 6, yeah, I mean, that's very... okay, so for the benefit of the video, so the idea here is it's a kind of synthetic variant of the Carillon located at the Carillon that's marking the overall change in temperature over 100 years, but only around 6 p.m. And it's doing that slowly over a year by becoming increasingly eccentric relative to the original sound image of the Carillon. So that's a piece that's, you know, in some ways it's just revisiting issues that Max Neuhaus set up, you know, a long time ago.
What are some of those issues that Max Neuhaus set up for the benefit of
the idea of the plausible sound. And the plausible sound is a sound that's part, well, this could just be part of the environment, so you don't necessarily pay attention to it immediately.
Right, and of course, I mean, Dan St. Clair was doing work like that, Kuivila.
Oh, sure.
And so I guess what I mean by that is this particular work you're speaking of requires an audience commitment, requires a listener commitment.
Well, or it doesn't care about that. That it's enough to recognize that, wait a minute, that's wrong. Actually, the best experience I had of that piece was I was going out to the car in the parking lot, and I heard the carol, and I said, wait a minute. And I said, oh, right, that's my piece. That I had sort of, I was not located in that mode at that moment.
I was talking about the Ted Mencken piece.
Oh, the Ted Mencken piece.
I'm saying that to me it's a shift of that sensibility or of that.
Well, it's about something else. Yeah, I mean the Ted Mencken piece is about something different. But I don't think. I mean, in a way, I think one of the reasons.
For you, and for me to get it. Don't.
Okay.
Along with parenthood, one of the reasons why I haven't been pushing my work much for quite a while, and now I'm sort of starting to push into it again, is that I couldn't work out. I couldn't work out precisely how to think about my own work in relation to these changed circumstances. And now I kind of see an approach that works for me, that makes sense to me.
By involving Kai or by...
No, it has nothing to do with Kai. It has to do with... that's a totally different matter. It has to do with the question of historicity, well, of history, and of changed circumstance, and how... Okay, so, for example, back to a lot of my work, early work, it's all, fundamentally grounded in making my own circuitry. And so it has all to do with making alternatives to the conventional norm.
I need to make the burger.
Yep.
Okay.
That no longer makes any sense. It's interesting to me that it does make sense with relation to these boutique synthesizer makers,
right?
But it makes sense as this kind of funny alternative capitalism, which is why I like the term mediopreneurial.
Mediopreneurial, yes.
That it's entrepreneurial, and that they got to make a living.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the ambition of it is to create a business form that is an exoskeleton for this unredeemable alterity, this difference of attitude, and to render that commercial. So that's interesting. Okay, well, that's not for me.
There's a latent. There's a dissonance in there that's part and parcel of the project, and that makes it kind of fun, and lively.
Right. And that's an interesting version of it. That's not something that I will do. Yeah. That's not for me to do. But it helps characterize a little bit of the issue of why I stopped doing that, and why, say for example, I had so much fun. Part of the reason I had so much fun working with Peter is that I got to all of that circuitry world, which is a kind of reptilian part of my brain, got to bring it forward again. In a similar fashion, looking at Michael Johnson on the Tudor instruments and circuits is very, very related to that. So the thing here is that these are now little bits of cultural history that can be contested, or that they can be completely lost knowledge, or can be maintained. She wants a hamburger. She's done. Anyway.
I don't know that we're going to have a part 2 unless we pull a geographical and we bring Ron down to Atlanta through the auspices of Methodist Church in Marietta, which seems unlikely right now and will probably seem as unlikely in a year.
The Reverend Kuivila will appear.
The Reverend President and the Reverend Kuivila will do a project together. This has been Ron Kuivila. He's titled in certain ways, and I'm Brian Parks, and I'm losing titles in particular ways, and I want to thank Janet Simone Parks, Alban, Gregory Parks, Orion for their cameos and various interventions. whatever the opposite of acousmaticity is, or its analog in the non-visual that can be seen by some and not by others, I don't think you can have this banana right now. I'm gonna start your banana, and
I have it, yeah.
I
A lot
want
of signing going on in the background.
I want to thank Ron. I think we're going to see some interesting connections, probably, which is a term Daniel Fish can use. I can't get it in my brain, possibly because of its banality. Between some of these talks we've had, especially with Jake, I feel in this one. But that doesn't really matter. Ron, thanks for your time. Thanks for being. We're live at the Harvey White House in West Hartford, Connecticut, on the porch. We're going to have dinner. And I think it would be very great to see Ron do a Warrior 3 with Janet in some sort of alternatum or as a diptych. Thank you.
Ciao. I'm gonna need well, actually, maybe if I do it from here.
I'm in line with you. I want to do just like you.
Okay. But she's a pro. Look at that. Damn.
I'll show you how. Can I be overtly activist?
Which is?
I think that the audience of people that are going to be interested in Ron, is he wearing Hershey boxers?
He is, yeah. It would appear, yes.
In Ron Kuivila, you know, aesthetic theory and art theory, would not necessarily be proponents of extended breastfeeding, or might be ignorant of it. Is my hope that the co-presence here will yield a newfound cohort of natural birthers, extended breastfeeders in the Euro-American sort of pantheon.
That's possible.